Welcome back to the Making It podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Brad Fullarton. We're in his flat right now in Glasgow. I've come up from Newcastle for the day to visit him. So it's a pleasure to be here, Brad. Thank you for coming on. Now, Brad is making it as a sports psychologist. He's in a raw journey of applied psych. So, Brad, what was your first spark of wanting to become a sports psych? And where are you in your journey now?
Oh, first of all, I just want to say thanks for coming up, mate. You guys made an effort to come all the way up from Newcastle to come here, so very thankful. Being very proactive, and I think you'll be all right in the long run for being a
Cheers, mate.
sports psych. So, yeah, for me, I suppose that the story of probably never had that cool moment that I think you've even had that's made you go, I want to get into sports psychology. But if I think back to my own career as a young footballer, I didn't know that I was experiencing a psychological challenge at that time. But having picked up the knowledge that I have now, I now understand that I was going through a little bit of probably a mental block, performance anxiety, specifically to do with penalties. For me, I remember so clearly missing a penalty. I remember I opened my foot out too much and it just went out that way, hit the top of the bar. And when you're that age, obviously you get a bit of a slagging for that stuff, and that probably got to me, but I didn't realise it. And I knew I wanted to go and study sport in some capacity, and almost luckily one of the courses, or the only course I got accepted onto, was sport and psychology, which kind of meant that I was doing a bit of coaching, I was doing a bit of psychology of the brain, I was doing a bit of biomechanics, I was doing physiology, I was doing everything. Didn't really know what I wanted to do until probably fourth year when my dissertation specialised a little bit more on sports psychology specifically. And it was about attribution theory and essentially how people explain things. So when you win, you're more likely to explain it related to internal causes, and when you lose, you're more likely to explain that related to external causes. Quite self-serving bias, it's called. And I think that was when I maybe got to grips with sports psychology a little bit, and I thought that while the ball's still rolling, I'm going to go and do the masters, and that was the psychology of sport, and that's when things became a little bit more applied. I never had a research bone in my body really. Really struggled with my dissertations, struggled with any research element, but I have good people skills, I'm good at practical. And I found out about the sport and exercise psychology accreditation route. That was through BASES, which is now called CASES. And I did that over 2.5 years, which is more hands on, doing placement, going in to do the work and writing up about it rather than researching about it. And I think that kind of suits who I am as a person, and that's where I am today, as we've spoken about all day, trying to make it as an applied sports psychologist that's self-employed. Like I am going it alone, and it's hard, but the business is building. I'm working in some cool spaces, and I work too hard for it to not work out. It's just tough reminding myself of that in the difficult moments sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's awesome because, like we spoke about earlier today, you're going down the route which you truly want to take, and we speak a lot about that on this podcast about doing the things in your life which you're truly passionate about and you love, and that making it journey is like we said earlier. You're going to look back on these moments and you're going to be like, they were the good days when I was really trying to be that sports psych. Now, what would you say in your journey so far is like a story that defines who you are now? So going through the journey you have from that masters to being 28 now, going for that self-employed, what's happened in your journey, in your story, which defines who you are now?
I think that's an unbelievable question, and I'm lucky I've got an answer to that because I'd imagine that some people could struggle. But I think for me, I never identified with anybody who was teaching me psychology. They're in suits, they're in ties, they're doctors, they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And I suppose I was having that identity crisis of how can I ever do what they're doing? I am not that. I'm not research inclined. I don't dress like that. I don't speak like that. I'm a wee guy from Ayrshire in Scotland who likes listening to hip hop, who's very passionate about football, who loves dressing in baggy trousers and caps, right? I'm I don't identify with any of these people. And I had a lecturer, Dr. Robert Morris, so shout out Rob if you ever see this, who was in his 30s and had recently been in the shoes that I was in. Different personality, but more grounded. I felt more close to where I'm at. And he was the one that introduced me to the cases route and the potential of that. And it was probably when I really went, right, okay, maybe I can actually do this. Because I wasn't so academic. I'm not like book smart as such, but I've got the skills to do it. I connect with people. And he was probably quite similar, and I really resonated with that. And I struggled with my identity even throughout my training. I thought I had to change who I am in order to be who I am in my work, and that they're two separate things. But for me, like the penny drop moment was like people want to work with me because of who I am as a person. They don't want to keep coming back to me because I'm an unbelievable psychologist, which I might be, right? But it's more about who I am as a person and like conveying my authenticity and who I am and my personality and being vulnerable and being open within appropriate boundaries is, I feel, the reason that people keep coming back to me and that people like me and that where I am at this point. So, and it's a self care thing as well. Like, I need that to be there. I'm quite a passionate person. I'm being open is one of my values, and being able to share that helps me to do a good job. And I don't think I ever knew that was possible until I was introduced to Rob and all of that. So, that's been you're talking 4 or 5 years of dealing with that, and I still deal with it now, but I'm more at peace with being me and my own work, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And we're speaking a lot about that professional conflict with being yourself. And it's awesome that you've been on that journey of like learning who you are and who you want to be and applying that in a professional setting. And something I've seen in your socials, shout out Brad Fullarton, Ambition Sports Psychology on Instagram, is something you coined a sports psychology wobble.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, would you like to dive into that and, how do you deal with wobbles in your journey?
Well, they're less frequent now because of how many I've had to deal with, maybe, which is a good thing. But if you're watching this, like, and you're training to be a sports psych, or there's probably another version of this across other disciplines. But for me, it's defined as how am I going to be able to do this as a career? Is this the right career for me? What does my future look like? Because I don't know. How much money can I make? Have I made the wrong decisions? So it's essentially just like a lot of doubt and worry, anxiousness about how the future looks for you. And that moment of, am I going to have to switch lanes here? Am I going to have to give up the career that I've worked in to get something more secure? And that's a reality that as sports psychs we do face, especially if you're going self-employed. Um, so throughout my training, I probably had a lot of those, and I think the way that you deal with those is you need to connect with people who've gone through a similar thing to what you have gone through. So I was speaking to like my parents, close friends, my girlfriend. They're there for you. Like, of course they can, of course they are, but there's only so much that they actually know about the nuances of what you're going through. They don't get it specifically because it's such a complex job and there aren't a lot of opportunities out there for us. We need to learn to carve our own ones. And until you've spoken to someone who's gone through the same journey as you, it's tough to kind of get through that. So, whilst I still have some of those to this day, and they're maybe mini wobbles, not as catastrophic as the one we're kind of talking about. Um, I've done a lot of good things throughout my career now. I'm working in some unbelievable spaces right now that I'm so lucky to work in. And I've communicated that on webinars and communicated to you. That grounds me, it makes me feel grateful, and it makes me go, well, why shouldn't there be more of that to come? Why isn't there more of that for other people that are coming through? There is. It's just that you need to carve that out yourself. If you get qualified as, I'm taking a random thing, but like as an engineer, out your masters or out your undergrad, you'll probably get a job. Coming out of sports psych, in Scotland or in somewhere that's not London, basically, you are going to have to think very creatively about what opportunities are ahead for you. But because of that, I've picked up so many good skills that it's like survival instincts, marketing, branding, social media, all that stuff that I didn't have before. I've added so many strings to my bow because of the challenges that have came my way. In big picture, that's good. But when you don't have a lot of those strings to your bow in the first place, you're like, oh, panicking. I don't know if this is the right thing for me. So it's almost like resilience in a sense, challenge after challenge, tougher, 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 more skills. And I think that's kind of helped me to be a better version of myself personally, and it helps my clients that I work with as well.
Awesome. And in a world which could become very research theory based, you're showing how to do it by learning just by doing it. And our recent episode was titled "Let It All Work Out." And like you mentioned there, like if I'm doing this good work now, who's to say that I can't get that thing later on in my career, which is going to be, is going to be worth it when you look back and the journey you've been on. And, why not have that perspective of it will work out.
Yeah.
And it's cool that you're on that journey. You mentioned that you're doing some cool stuff right now in terms of like practical work. Would you like to kind of go into detail about some of the work you're doing right now in terms of like, I know you've done some stuff with tennis and now you're doing some stuff with bowls. So what sort of work have you done so far on your journey?
Yeah, so early stages was all kind of football, and then it kind of fell into tennis. Different cultures there. Coming from a football background, there is that sort of masculinity play in place that we don't need sports psychology. Like, what do you know about that? And I found that tough, and then I pivoted into tennis, an individual sport where it's pretty black and white of how important the mental side of it is. And we've had good role models like Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, Andy Murray, who all sort of show that in their own way. So when I go and work with the kids in there, it's and the coaches, it's yeah, we know this is good. Like we can benefit from that. And that helped me to feel more comfortable and probably at ease with my own work. Now I'm in a new context, which is bowls. So this is like lawn bowls. People won't know an awful lot about it. Um, but it's a working class sport. It's typically a sport that is stereotypically played by older people, and socially as well. So going into that environment, I'm unsure of what I'm going to get. But honestly, I work with a group who are age range from 21, 22, all the way up to 75. Some of these athletes are extremely successful, multiple gold medals, silver, bronze medals, world championships, Scottish championships, British championships. They're extremely successful people, but have done all that without sports psychology support in the past. So the insecurity part of me goes, well, why are they going to want to listen to me then? So I think going into that environment, I've had to be delicate and quite curious in order to get them to buy into that. So getting them to explore what they find psychologically challenging about the sport rather than me telling them what is, and then being able to support them with that. And I think that delicate approach to integrating a new thing into this environment, new thing being psychology, has been required a lot of patience and a lot of discipline. But a year down the line, we are now building up to Commonwealth Games. We've got a team of 14 athletes, and I firmly believe that every athlete is now bought into the importance of the mental side of the game, whether it's fully invested or a little bit invested in some parts. I think I've got all of them in some capacity, but that's a testament to the slow, patient integration of it over time. And it's all down to the relationships that you build with these people. And then going back to my point on people like me, they don't think I'm an unbelievable psychologist. That is exactly what's happened in this environment. Down to earth, relatable, curious, want to help. People like that. And it means when they come to me, we'll have that normal conversation for 5, 10 minutes, and then they'll want some help with something. And they know that I'm a nice guy that has the skills, that has the knowledge to be able to help them with the challenge that they're dealing with. And I think that's the reason that I'm going to a Commonwealth Games with this team. Like they want me around. I've had a positive influence on the culture, and I'm ready to like help them in the highest pressure situation that you can really get in the sport. And I'm just unbelievably like happy and grateful that I've carved that opportunity out for me from all through my own outreach and doing the hard work to be able to represent my country at home games and have hopefully the tiniest fingerprint on any colour of medal, and seeing those guys out there performing will be the absolute highlight of my career for years to come. So that's very much my North Star at the moment. So if you're watching the games, may have a lot of English fans watching this, but if you're watching the games, stick the balls on. It'll be good fun, and you might see me.
You might see him in the
Yeah.
corner. But yeah, all the best at the Commonwealth Games,
Thanks,
and
mate.
be proud of yourself for getting yourself that role, because you've clearly gone down a route of, self-employment and, on your own journey. And to get a role like that is a good success and a good leap in your journey. Now, you mentioned someone earlier when we were chatting about when you played football, you were very loyal, and like you would run through the ground for your team, for your players. And just listening to you speak, you seem like you're very resilient, when you talk about the wobbles, and you seem like you're very determined, and your business is called Ambition Sports Psychology. You're very ambitious. Where do you feel like this comes from? Because you've definitely got a drive in you. Like even with your marathon, like you didn't stop. Like where do you think that drive comes from?
That's a great question. I think being involved in football from such a young age, I think that I've almost the sport teaches you that. I've always been someone that would be out. I remember when we used to live at my grand grandpa's, being out the back door, and I had my kind of nets, and I'm out there till late at night, and I've got the wheelie bins, and I'm taking free kicks until it gets dark. I've always probably pushed myself to the limit to try and be successful, and I think when I stopped playing football, or maybe the spark had gone a little bit more, I needed to direct that part of me into something else. And whilst in a sporting context, it has been the marathon running, I think it's also like my business as well. I speak about this a lot, and this is maybe a negative spin on it, but I either have a big ego or I'm just hyper aware of my own ego. And I think my own ego hates to see me fail, which we all do, right? So I'm really aware of that. And when I talk to clients about the story that shows up most often for me that challenges me, it's the I am a failure story. What if I fail? What if I don't? So there is that part of me that's almost not an option. And therefore I'm so determined. So I go the other way to ensure that that doesn't happen. But I think, yeah, I've called it ambition because that's what I am. That I think that would sum me up. But it's also that I want to work with ambitious people who are trying to do the same as what I'm doing. I'm just doing it with my business. They're doing it with their sport, and we're kind of doing that together. So where it comes from, maybe described it a little bit, but definitely ties back to, I'd say, my values in terms of being loyal, being ambitious, and being quite an open person is maybe some of the reasons that I am so determined to make it work. But I would say that those things are always things that I've been since I can remember.
Can that drive? Does it ever become unhealthy?
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, I mean, like my work um, is like it's not my most important thing. Obviously, I've got my relationship and my family and stuff. But see, when you are trying to get money in, like the amount of things that I've had to cancel to be like, sorry, like it's a business opportunity. I need to take it. It almost does trump other things sometimes. So, and something I've probably found over the last year, 18 months, since I've been taking ambition more seriously, is that that social part of me isn't being fulfilled as much as what it once was before. And there are benefits to that. For example, I'm not drinking as much, for example, but I do, as a loyal person, I do feel a disconnect between some of the people who are important to me. You know, I'm up here in Glasgow, my family are down in Ayrshire, my friends are there. It's 40 minutes away, but that is kind of significant when you get to this age and stage of life. And I do feel like my drive to be successful has meant that I've not connected with people who are important to me as much over the last year. I hope that that evens out a little bit, and I hope that those people understand why that's happening. But there's no doubt that being self-employed and trying to make your own business, that you have to make sacrifices. The second part to that would probably be like, you know, I feel like I'm always working. I'm at night. I'm looking at my client list. I'm looking at who I need to schedule in. I'm looking at my predicted income for the next month. Looking at what I might need to do to get that up. Last thing before I go to bed. First thing when I wake up in the morning, I'm maybe catching up on notifications that I've got before I'm even out my bed. So the things that I can be doing better, but I think that just sums up my approach to my work and that I am all in. And always learning to, you know, improve myself and look after myself better. Like for example, my Monday to Friday, my head's spinning wild, but if I'm not delivering something at the weekend, you know, I won't be on like social media and all that. I do have time to spend with family, but I do think there are downsides to being an ambitious person.
So, what do you do to switch off personally?
Yeah, I think my weekends are my time to do whatever I want. I don't. It's when I'm on. It's when I'm in the head. It's when I'm in a headspace of I'm not creating content here. I'm just gonna go and live life. I'm not gonna go take photos and take videos with a social media thing in mind. I think also scheduling things into my week that are like non-negotiables or blocking off that time. So like I go to run club on a Wednesday, and I view that like I used to view football training. It's like I am going rain, hail, or snow. I'm putting my shoes on and I'm going down and doing it. And that is almost a non-negotiable in my schedule. And I think for me, I think that's why marathon training suits me as well. Because if I know I'm running a marathon in a few months, I need to do the training. Like you can't rock up to a marathon and expect to be able to do it. So therefore, it almost forces me to say no to the paid work or no to the opportunity because, like, I need to do a 28k this Saturday, and I think that has a ripple effect in the rest of my life where it structures me, it gives me that structure, and it looks after my mental health well-being when I'm out there doing it. When I'm out there running, it's just me. I always come back with a completely different perspective on what I've had before. So I think that's why that type of training suits me as a you might maybe I'm just working out the sort of all or nothing mentality that I have.
You mentioned earlier about that distance between your friends and feeling like because of your ambition, you've maybe not been as connected to them. And I know you mentioned a term earlier, which I'll let you describe, to do with a snake. Would you like to describe that feeling of when you're trying to become someone you really want to be? What is that feeling for you when you then become distant from what was and that person who you're kind of moving away from?
Yeah, I think it's like I call it skin shedding. Um, I recently basically started a Substack with the full premise of exploring that almost in a therapeutic self-care way. What I've been experiencing over the last year is like I used to be a certain person. Not that I was a bad person, but I didn't have this strong of a head on my shoulders. I didn't know what I wanted as much as what I do now. And I'm really struggling to maybe accept that I'm moving away from being this person to that person. because this person is all a lot of people have ever known. And in moving to be this person, I worry they that people dislike the person that I am becoming because it means that they are less important in my life or less seen or less connected with. And as someone who really values loyalty, like I am a loyal person to my core. Like it, as you described, when I play football, I'll run through a brick wall. If you're playing against me, you don't want to play against me. If you're in my team, you'll like that. It's the same. It's why I've had the same core group of mates forever. It's why I'm so close with my family. And I struggle with the fact that I've moved away from being that person to this person because I feel like it causes conflict with my value of loyalty. And I'm struggling to accept that. But I think also, like, I am a people pleaser. I don't want to work on my loyalty because I'm happy with that. But I do want to work on my people pleasing skills because the reason that I'm so stressed about that is because I care so much about what people think of me. If I didn't care what those people thought about me, then it wouldn't be a problem. And that's something that I'm trying to work on, like through my own means, whether it's writing, whether it's talking about this, doing it right now. And everyone's probably got a version of that. I feel like mine's just maybe quite late to be like 28 and go through that skin shedding. It's quite an existential, like, oh my god, I've worked it all out. I'm in touch with who I am. Quite late to be going through that. And yeah, it just, yeah, I just worry how people see that, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mentioned Chris Williamson, and he spoke about it being the lonely chapter of becoming someone you feel is yourself, but when you're on that journey, you're kind of that lonely chapter of not really understanding who you are, who you want to be around, who kind of ties into that new person you're becoming. And you mentioned the word acceptance, and you find it's been difficult to accept that sort of change. Now, I know one of the big things you do in your space is acceptance, like therapy, acceptance commitment therapy. And I know that's quite a big part of your practice. I guess what kind of stemmed that journey and why is acceptance so important to you?
Yeah, I think like culturally we're kind of taught to not feel a certain way or don't think like that, don't feel like that. And I think when you try and not to feel a certain way or try not to think
Almost like
something,
you're fighting against it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when you fight against it, you feel more of it. And I think that's probably something that I had maybe been doing. And the penny dropped when I did some training. And instead of doing that, it's like, can you just, it's easier. It's so much easier to just accept that that is what's happening. So this is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. But how do I want to move forward with this instead of against it? I can do that so much. I can do that. I can do it right now. If you're fighting against something, trying not to, it's like, oh my God, I don't know why I'm still going through this. I need to speak to someone. I need to do this. I need to try this new activity. If I can just accept that my experiences, my thoughts, my feelings are part of who I am, and that I'm going to move forward with them towards like values that are important to me, loyalty, openness, respect, all these things, being ambitious, then that's going to help me to be able to accept that and still be the version of me that I want to be. So that just really, really resonates with me. And going through acceptance and commitment therapy training as a practitioner was life changing for me. And the amount of light bulb moments I've been able to offer my clients because of it, because you're breaking down rules that they've lived by all their life and you're getting them to see things differently. That literally provokes a reaction that is like, oh my God, why have I been doing that? as full time, and it's stuff around like telling myself not to feel nervous, or it's why am I worried about what this person is doing when all I should really be doing is worrying about myself and my values and how I'm living life. And when you can get people to connect with that in an organic way, it's just like kind of transformative, really. And ACT also offers a really nice framework, and has 6 different components that you can move through with the client that helps them to deal with their issue. So you can pivot quite nicely between each component in a way that's quite smooth without the client actually knowing it. So I like that I have a framework that I can move through, that you can kind of fall back on and move through. But I like the existential, I like the grandness of it all, the big picture of it all, that just helps people to see things in a completely different way. Because that is what like my work is really all about, I'd say.
Awesome. And how important is it making an impact on people? Because with the role you're going down with sports psychology, that is the job. You know, you're aiming to help people make a positive impact. How important is that to you, and how much does that drive you?
I suppose that's why I'm in the game, really. Like my biggest wins are when I feel like I have had a positive impact on someone, where you can see it in their face, or you can hear it in the language that you've used, or even you just get some nice feedback. Like I feel like that's why I do what I do, because I've been on the other end of that myself, going through my training, and it feels unbelievable. And I think that's probably the reason that I have changed things about myself and gone through the skin shedding process in the first place. And I know how much better my life is, how much healthier I am. I know I have a much more, I don't want to say positive outlook, but I see things a lot differently now in life because of the experiences that I've had. And I want to be like guys like, that you can actually get this as well. And I can offer you that quite simply. And to be able to overcome something that's really been bothering you and that you feel like nobody can help you with, to be able to overcome that is like an unbelievable feeling. And I want to give that to other people. And bear in mind, the view that people have of sports psychologists is that I help people to perform better. I don't think I've talked about that much today.
Mm.
It's about moving into that new version of yourself, getting closer to that best version of yourself that you want to be. That's the most important thing. To enjoy life more, to be healthier, to have that different perspective. Like, your performance isn't that important compared to all that stuff. But if you have all of that, when your stressors show up in your performance or in your sport, you've got that outlook on everything else already. So why can't you take it into your sport as well? And then you can perform better as well. So for me, like, it's like come for the performance, yeah, but stay for how much of a positive impact this has had on your life. Like, I think at an innate human level, that's kind of what we all should be doing almost. Just try to help ourselves and others just be the best version of ourselves. Or that's what I think, anyway.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I completely agree. That journey of being yourself and going down your path, and I mean everything you're doing with the self-employment is going down that journey of being yourself, and helping other people do that too is great. And I love what you say about not just looking at the performance, but adding that extra layer of skin, I guess, not just and shedding it and putting that new layer of skin of being a good person, being a better person, not just a better athlete.
Yeah.
Now coming towards the end of the podcast, brother, I just wanted to ask if you had to give advice to to someone like me, to someone who's starting their sports psychology journey. What advice would you give to that person, having been through what you have so far yourself?
I think, like, what you've been doing is being on the front foot and being proactive. Like, this isn't all going to come to you. You need to go out and seek it. Like, people in this field typically want to help you, but they ain't going to reach out to you and say, hey, like, do you want some help? I can help you with this. like offer to jump on a call, like be curious about what they do. People want to share their own story and they want to help someone who is in the shoes that they were in not that long ago. So be on the front foot and do that stuff. Like more business sided, I would say, like have it in mind that you're going to be working in private practice or self employment at some point. Have that in your mind as early as you can. Like you're doing great with your social media stuff. Like that will be a rock for you when you get to, like, let's say your training stage. You've already got followers, you've got loads of content. That should be a rock. It's basically a portfolio of stuff that you do. And that helps you to reflect, it helps you to explore psychological concepts and theory, promote your services, all that stuff. It's a really healthy way of using social media. So keep doing that. And yeah, I suppose broaden the scope of the areas that you might end up working in. Like for me, I was like, oh, I'm gonna work in a football academy in Scotland, and that's gonna be it. Like now, I would love to work in like any sport. I'm working in bowls. Give me like snow sports, extreme sports. You know what I mean? Give me like equestrian, whatever. Like I'm so interested about what's going on in high performance in other sectors, corporate as well, like music and stuff like that. So don't like niche yourself into being this one thing. Be curious and be ready to pivot to what's going on in all these other sectors, because in doing that you'll gain so many more skills and you'll have so many new experiences that you would never have, and that will help you to be a better person and a better practitioner. So I suppose understand what you're good at and the areas that you can support with, but be ready to do that in a broad, like in broad context, I suppose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Brad, thank you for coming on the
Right,
podcast.
no worries, mate. That was a pleasure.
That's been Brad Fullarton, Making It Moments. I really appreciate your time today, brother. I appreciate you letting me into your flat to do this podcast, and it's a pleasure, and I hope to stay in contact, man. Thank
Yeah,
you so
no
much.
worries,
All
mate.
the best in
Cheers,
your
man.
journey, brother.
Yeah, you
Take it
too,
easy.
mate.
Thanks for watching.